So commerce. So we joked about commerce earlier, the Amazon experience. In most cases, the customers downstream drive how the supply chain operates, right? If they're not placing orders, you don't have demand. If you don't have demand, there's no need for supply. Simple experience, right? In the retail world, customers drive it to the extent of drive innovation up the chain to the manufacturers, those distributors, and even the CMOs, raw material providers, because they want an experience a certain way, which causes the whole supply chain to not react, change how they view things, change how they do things. And if the customer's not getting the experience they want, if they can, they go elsewhere. It's a bit harder in the pharma industry, obviously, because everyone doesn't produce every single drug. But the idea is that if you're not doing it for me, if Stan, looking at me now, Stan doesn't want to do it, I say, okay, great, I'll go to bed, right? But and you think about how they drive that demand. So this is our view of how, and again, this is the debatable, right, or discussed area, how digital commerce can look when we think about digitizing transactions. We're not going to use EDI transaction codes here because some people don't use EDI, some use Edifact. There's SAP specific names for the transactions, but the naming convention you see up top is what we're going to go by. So the idea, and I'll walk through it quickly. As I mentioned in the prior talk, the price sales catalog of the digital space is key because, again, you want to be buying at the right price, knowing your pack sizes, knowing your descriptions. If a manufacturer or wholesaler is discontinuing a product, you want to know that so you can take it out of your catalog. You're not purchasing against it. You're cutting purchase orders. You're expecting an acknowledgement back from the customer side. Once that acknowledgement's happened, you want an ASN to know when the product is shipped, right? Once it's shipped, again, depending on your business orchestration, there's an invoice writing right with the ASN, or you may get it sometime soon after, right? It may be paper, email, or hopefully digitally one day soon. The discussion between the credit debit adjustment, right? Once our AP team takes a look at it, they don't agree. They may go back and have a discussion. Is there a need for a credit or debit adjustment based on data that's known? And then we get into the remittance advice that allows you to digitally tell your partner how you're going to pay and when to expect it. We do see a lot of cases with the e-invoice piece that we kind of discussed with the remittance, but either way, the idea is that I can digitally tell someone how I'm going to pay them when they can expect it. And then, the pain of everyone is the return authorization, right? The customer reaching out and saying, hey, I need to return something for a reason. Here's my details and data. Can I get a return authorization number to log in my system and tell me how to send this product back for some reason? So we'll look at the product flow. So the PO, the acknowledgement, the advance ship notice, and the return authorization. When we have our customer conversations, a lot of these are the common ones that we get, is to digitize the purchase order. I really want an acknowledgement back from my supplier. Can you tell me, please, you're going to do this so I can know ahead of time and plan downstream? And then once you've gotten ready to ship it through whatever mode of transportation, tell me you got the address right. When is it coming? What all is in the shipment? So I can plan accordingly. Dock space, moving that product to the next phase in its life cycle, allocating space for it. More so, even understanding if you ship my order in full. Right? Got to get everything I'm expecting on this. So the purchase order. Anything on here stand out that's unknown or curious from anyone's perspective? Purchase order experiences. How are you guys doing it today? Is it email? Is it PDF? Is it portal logins? I see a few nods.
It's probably all of the above, right?
All above?
Right?
Yeah.
So think of your poor purchasing department, right? They have their own ERP system for your company, and they have to keep that information up to date. But how do they place the purchase orders? Do they log into portals? Probably. Are they emailing attachments that they downloaded from your ERP system? Probably. Are they calling them in? Are they calling in orders? Are they faxing? I was a buyer before my time at TraceLink, and I had to fax an order, and this was, 10 years or so. Fax machines still exist. They're usually built into printers these days, but they do still happen. So for your purchasing department or the people in charge of placing purchase orders, they have many different ways they need to send that information, and all of it needs to be in your system as well. So think about how many times they're touching that purchase order. How many times are they entering that data? How many times do they have to go through that process with passwords, like Caitlin mentioned this morning, with the different methodologies, and then what if you email and that person's on vacation? So all those sorts of challenges are things we want you to think about. By all means, shout out, communicate. It's a big group, but it's not that big a group. Whatever one person is facing, all of you are. So by all means, join in the conversation with us.
Yeah. And then once you take the part, so to Caitlin's point, to our Beth's point, and there's a lot more that's going to follow the same kind of thought process. You improve your accuracy of your orders, right, when you start digitalizing this. If you're doing the spreadsheet format, we've all fat-fingered a key or two on the keyboard, keying something into a spreadsheet. But we improve the accuracy, getting the details right, because you have master data in your system already. You have the product details in your system already. Why not leverage it to create the purchase orders and send it digitally outside of downloading into a CSV or downloading to a PDF and having to email it, right? Faster processing. It takes that manual process work out of the way. So now we've gotten our errors out of the way, and now I can send it real time. Some of your ERP systems can even schedule purchase orders, and we'll talk about forecast, plan, and release later, but the idea that I can send purchase orders on a schedule, and I'm now looking at my ERP system or leveraging the Mint dashboards to actually view the business versus having to run the business, managing it day to day. So again, it gives you the chance to think better about innovation of how you use your platform. Efficiency and visibility are obvious, right? It gets it out of the email portal space where one person typically sees it, or the worst side is I send an email to 10 people and I copy everybody in the company because I don't know who the buyer is I'm sending to, and I'm hoping someone sees this purchase order. It gets into the system, gets to the right people. You have access to the system on each side. You can log in and see the data. So you're going to hear these similar themes as we go through. The close sister, cousin, brother, family member to the PO is the other side of it. The acknowledgement. It's as it's defined on screen. Just confirm that we are able to do it. I'm able to plan. I can commit that I can commit. I'm expecting a product inbound at some point based on just the acknowledgement. I placed an order for 100. You told me you're going to send me 100. I'm okay with my 100 from my forecast perspective. I'm ready to go. Planned orders are kind of filled out at concept. When you don't have this or the other side, you're sending a bunch of emails. You're just one customer to a supplier. If they're using email to capture it, you're just one of their 100 customers, maybe 200, maybe 1,000 customers. There are multiple buyers and suppliers in each organization, but again, I'm manning an inbox. And once I open that inbox, I have to go over to my ERP system and I'm pecking in information. If I need this product urgently, I'm not gonna get it urgently because you didn't even see it yet, right? It sounds very simple, but small things like that can improve the supply chain. So again, it's that idea of you getting better efficiency, reducing errors just by those two transactions alone that you can enact with Mint.
So just generally a show of hands, who actually receives acknowledgements from their partners? Whether it's a PDF, whether it's an email, whether it's a phone call, just no one?
Anything.
Anyone? Yeah? And how do you receive it manually? Manually? Is it?
The one who knows. It's a PDF that they send. Usually they just accept signing it, or they just say, no, this date is not okay, so we can deliver on this date, things like that.
And usually is it an acknowledgement where it's fulfilling everything on the purchase order, or is it a mixture of sometimes some line items can't be fulfilled and they give you extra delivery dates or different milestones for different products?
Yeah, so sometimes they give extra delivery dates or different delivery dates or things like that.
And then do you have to go and update your ERP system after that?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay, and just because I work in the solution consulting part of our organization, and we hear tons of stories, like Terence mentioned, just PO Act sounds simple, but actually we can have a 3-hour workshop just on these two transactions, because we hear very varied use cases from all the different types of companies we speak to. So it is something that we are encouraging our customers, obviously with Mint, and how we can get this information digitally, because we've had customers that actually send purchase orders out that have been keyed in manually but incorrectly, and that's gone to production, and now they have a overstock, and the problem just gets bigger and bigger, and end of the day, it's money, right? So.
And also, at the end of the day, if you don't, so the majority of you apparently don't get purchase order acknowledgements.
Yeah.
So how do you know that your purchase order was received by whoever you sent it to? How do you know that they have the quantities and the dates that you're working through? Does your purchasing team or whoever places the order just call, email, constantly asking for updates? Where is it? Do you have it? Are you in production yet? A lot of those questions could be answered with one simple transaction, right? So wouldn't that be great? From your business perspective, if you had that information, or if you have to manually reconcile the information, reading whatever scribble they have on their PDF of dates and formats and quantities, what if you didn't have to do that?
So I'll answer Beth's question on behalf of you. From what I've heard is that companies that don't receive an acknowledgement, their way of business is my goods will turn up at the dock door in 2 weeks' time, and that's how they're running their business. But they want to get better. And some
say no news, good news.
yeah, and ideally, you know, the way the world's moving with digitalization and everyone, you're working in a more kind of with more visibility and transparency. That's not the way you really want to do business. You want to get those key transactional informations directly into your enterprise system, directly into your ERP system.
Yeah. And what's interesting about the purchase order acknowledgement is similar to what you just mentioned. It's going to show up eventually. You can get multiple PO acknowledgements. Yeah. Today, I may tell you, yes, I can fulfill your order. Tomorrow, the other buyer or the other supplier sold a pallet of something, a lot of something. And now I look at inventory, oops, I got to send you another updated acknowledgement. Imagine getting multiple updates. That's a true use case we have. I can't name the customer, but they purely get 5 updates a week for one PO. Now I have to go into each email, hopefully they're chained together, if not, individually, and make sure I have the right one keyed into whatever system I have. What's close to that is the ASN, kind of to your point. If it shows up, who's that? Shows up, it shows up. All right, okay, send me an ASN. Tell me when it's gonna come. If you didn't acknowledge me, okay, fine. Send me an ASN as soon as possible so I at least know you got the location right, I know what's on the way, and I know when it's going to arrive. I can plan something, right? Again, the idea is that you can be more agile as best you can. 100% agility, I don't know what that looks like. I think about athletes who, you know, track and field people, they're agile, right? They train all their life for one sport for like 5 seconds. Great. I don't know what 100% agile supply chain looks like, but if I'm not getting an acknowledgement after I send a purchase order, at least tell me when it's going to come so I can have the right people in place, the space allocated for it. If it needs to, you know, if I need to plan a second step of transportation for it, the more I know, the better I can plan at least. Funny thing about this one is you can get multiple ASNs as well. It can change. Transportation provider is booked up today. We thought we had the product ready to go. Someone damaged it with the forklift or however we move it, right?
Hurricane.
A hurricane just happened where I'm from. Out of nowhere, no one planned for that, right? But the idea is that the ASN itself can be automatically sent when things change in the supply chain. So think about the idea of having your internal systems connected where your TMS can tell your ERP something has changed. Now I can do a quick update out to my group. Hey, all the shipments that were planned to go out on the 10th have to go on the 15th because of something. I can give reason codes through this, but I can tell my customers, here's when it's going to arrive, here's the new date. Again, why would I really want to go through email every day and pick up updates and key it in every single time? And I'm keying in the same one multiple times a week. Efficiency's lost. You have no agility. You really don't have visibility because now your certainty level has plummeted. And you now probably have to plan to call another supplier to expedite a product to replace this one because you need it for production or to get to a customer. And then the last one we talked about, the return authorization transaction. How many people have worked in a warehouse or a space where you had to quarantine product and wait for disposition? Is that those terms? I see a few hands. How fun was that? Right? In some way, and depending on how you operate with your 3PL, your CMO, or your internal systems, right? Your internal warehousing team, floor space is money. All right, someone's going to charge you for floor space. More so, you want that product disposition because you've already paid for that product. You need to send it back so you can get your credit back or new product sent. The return authorization process is clunky simply because it's usually an adjacent group that handles it. Different people may handle it. You have to get this issue number so that you can send it back. You just can't send a shipment back blindly to a warehouse and hope they're going to grab it, right? They don't have any information other than your name. That's going to give them 2-3 weeks of time to do investigation to figure out where it come from, whose it was. Digitizing the process gives you the bulk of the information right up front inside your systems. So when someone has to go do investigation to clear you to return it, they have all the information related to that product you want to return. They give you that information. Now you know where to ship it, what reference number to have. When it's received at that location, this digital ride-along goes with it. They know when it's going to arrive, and they can immediately take action. I will not guarantee they're going to do it immediately, right? But they have the information. They don't have to go sift through paper to get to a disposition to close out a return. Returns are a big problem in a lot of industries. They sit in the corner of the warehouse. They stack up. If the warehouse team is not as efficient as they should be, there may be a time period where you can't return something. And drug products a lot of times have expiries, of course, attached to them. I don't need to explain it to you all. But yeah, this is another transaction that can be captured in digital space and again reduce a lot of stress and pain. So does anybody have return issues or return is a challenge today from their supply chain? Anyone want to chat about it or just want to, no?
No, so I'm a quality person and I'm
Oh.
mostly involved into returns. So in the supply chain, finance, and everyone in the company, basically one return needs like 10 people approval. So it's very complex if you don't have a return policy. So yeah.
Quality.
I can chat for hours about it.
Yeah. And so a lot of the information, to the point, many departments have to reference all this information. So in the ERP systems, the TMS and WMS, while this is a single transaction that goes in, the data from here can be spread across many areas in an ERP system. So one person not updating it. And we hear that use case a lot. Quality teams, for whatever reason, don't get the information when they should and it should go to them from returns to even inbound shipments. We'll talk about batch later, but the shipping comes in, quality needs to check off some things. They wait for a separate PDF altogether. And we heard, hey, we had the batch information that came with the shipment. If it came digitally, I don't have to go call the warehouse team to investigate and understand what came in. Never, I personally didn't think of that myself. I did not. Interesting. But it makes sense. Quality is an area that gets a lot of conversation. So finance, everyone's fun, is most fun area. Any finance people in the room? Anybody in the role who controls finance, or how many people like the finance people? So, they're not in here, so it's okay. You can say it. But a lot of the orchestration that happens in the supply chain, finance is attached to it. Here we only, we grade out purchase order and return authorization. We just talked about those. Invoice, credit, debit, and remittance, we're going to talk through. Those are kind of the obvious ones, right? But one can argue inventory can be placed here as a part of the finance flow. Again, depending on how you view the supply chain. I didn't put it here. We didn't put it here for this presentation, but inventory is money. It's a cost associated with purchasing it and holding it and moving it. It can be placed here, but we're going to talk about the purely direct ones related to finance. I'm going to pick on Moise a little bit because being in the EU, the e-invoicing concept, we look at invoicing as a general transaction because it happens. How it happens across the globe does vary quite a bit. So TraceLink is, I'll stop. I'll let Moise go.
Yeah. No, so, it's not just European markets, but there's also some other markets across the world that have certain rules by government mandates that in terms of invoices have to go through tax system and whatnot. So at the moment, as Terence mentioned, we've got an invoice transaction, which is just taking the data from one place to another, but it doesn't do all the tax-related information and go to government agencies. However, that is something that TraceLink is looking into at the moment to support e-invoicing in European markets and others. And we just mention it, just being very transparent, because it is a topic that comes up in quite a few conversations with our customers, especially in the European market.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So hold that thought, and we will definitely come back with more information on that.
Yeah, but if you think about the invoicing component, no matter how the method is done, the goal is the same. I want to pay for the goods and/or services that were rendered in the proper terms, right, in the method that was agreed upon. A lot of times, in the U.S. at least, it's ACH payment, right, process that are done. They don't really use the actual systems themselves. AP, the accounts payable, cuts a check in some cases, and PDFs and faxes it over. We don't worry about that piece too much, but this is the communication of how much do I owe you for what we did across a period, across some purchase orders, right? You want to do this because this increases faster payment processing. Yes, you get visibility. Yes, you reduce errors. You get to process the payments faster. Someone gets paid quicker. Someone gets off their books faster, right? If you delay that process, there's penalties. If you speed up that process, there's an upside to it. We can get some discounts, right, if you're on the buying side of this. Something that's interesting about invoicing, if you think about how companies would send a PDF of an invoice over, it's the same. It follows the same as the ASN and the PO acknowledgement concept. If I'm getting a bunch of, this is a real use case, I'm getting a ton of invoices from all my customers in my network. I have to open every single email. If I'm not the AP person, I have to forward it to the AP person. After I log it for my purposes, they have to key it all into the system. We'll get into reconciliation in a minute, but now I have to reconcile that. Invoice has hundreds of POs on it potentially. Why am I doing this manually? Sometimes he loads it to a spreadsheet. There are systems that can handle it, but typically these are sent over PDF. They're not sent digitally, right? So it's a scary thing to imagine having to handle. Then you add in any government request. Everyone loves government to an extent, but it's like once you have to get into the details, you want to make sure you get it right, and you don't want to have to fat finger anything or worry about keying stuff in or being late in working through your invoicing process. So similar to as a credit debit adjustment. So I've gotten the invoice, now what? I've gone through, looked at some things. This can be done off the invoice concept. This can also be done through other means that we can discuss later, but typically it is because of the invoice. We look at what happened, what did or didn't happen, what we thought happened. Again, I'm sifting through emails, trying to tell a story to reconcile my books. But when we want to submit a credit debit adjustment, it can be done in a digital manner. Again, if you email this information over, someone says a key it in, verified spreadsheet, what have you, you can digitize a credit debit adjustment transaction just as you can any other, but it supports the financial processes. So the accounts payable and accounts receivable people like the idea of this when we pitched it to them because, again, it's an arduous process. I talked about month-end earlier this morning. Month-end processing, there's a timetable, and 5 days a lot of times is the time you need to get it completed. If you have to go through manual processes to, now I've gotten the invoice, I've got it keyed in, I see errors, now what do I do, right? That process can iterate over and over again throughout the life cycle of your month-end close, but this is something you can look at on a reconciliation basis even. You get invoices in on time, review them, correct them the week you receive them as opposed to at the end of the month, right? Things like that we think about when we think speeding up the supply chain. And then remittance. The tail end, if you will. So we've settled, everything's okay. Now I, as the buyer, am gonna tell you how I'm going to pay and what I'm paying against. So I went through your invoice you sent me, you put 10 POs, I go back and I reconcile mine, I see 10 POs, I'm paying you X number of dollars or euro against those 10 POs. We're okay, everything is good, it makes sense. What this helps with is both sides can reconcile easily because now once I've done my analysis system-wise, I'm sending this out. When the other side receives it, they can do the same thing inside their system without having to manually figure it out. It should line up one-to-one inside the systems. It's the benefit of having it digitally. Even if your customer sent it over via a spreadsheet, the idea of fat fingering it, uploading a CSV with wrong data, you run into the same problem. Take the data out of the system as it is, and it makes life a lot easier. Recurring theme you're going to hear a lot throughout these conversations. But any thoughts about the finance flows or conversations around it?
For returns, for example, is also a finance bit because sometimes the return arrives in the warehouse like on the last day of the quarter, but then the credit note does not go in the same day. So maybe it's
and they're tied together. And that's part of, you highlighted the challenge because again, if I don't have this stuff digitized, I'm looking through a file folder or my documents folder on my desktop to double check and backtrack, did I get everything right? So imagine if I forgot to key in an RMA number to reference something. Maybe I did get the credit debit adjustment, I just don't know I got it because I don't have a reference number, or vice versa. I see a credit or debit adjustment, I don't know why it happened because I don't have the additional information to tell the story. And you see that a lot because again, disparate systems, different departments. Every department should be able to log into the native system in-house and see the data related to their job function. And that there's ways to do it if the data is digitalized.
So I don't think this is a normal question for everybody, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Have you had any experience with a system specifically with returns where you are getting returnable items back that need to come back rather than something that's an offhand? So a piece of equipment for, say, a medical device that's coming back for refurbishment or something that's on a time-based rental that's coming back. How does the system have ability to trigger and manage those types of automations?
So if you're using some sort of system to manage that process, right? You'll have your own SOPs of how to handle that return, and there'll be some sort of trigger from that system, or some sort of workflow that you might have to kind of complete the process, let's say. And at that point, that's where a solution like ours can take that data and transmit it to wherever it needs to go, and vice versa, bidirectional, right? So and also there's the UI concept as well, which we'll talk about a bit later. But essentially, if we're talking true kind of business to business, or system to system, then essentially both systems would handle that kind of internal process in terms of your own SOPs of how to handle that return, and then there'll be a workflow that would then push the data through, or pull the data through. Yeah.
Yeah, and then to add to that, I think Caitlin may have touched on it this morning, but the canonical model we have
Yeah.
we would look at your data attributes. That canonical model, while we've built it around the transaction we're discussing, the idea is we can extend that transaction, or that the canonical model, to support additional transaction information. So like this is like the common data for a return authorization, right? If there are additional attributes that you surface to us that need to go along with the use case, we can extend the canonical to support those as well. Again, easy flexibility for us, and it's native to your system you guys may have in place already.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bob kind of touched on that a little bit.
Bob did it. Yeah.
Well,
Bob, yeah. When he had his whole diagram with all the little pieces of the cake thing. So that would kind of get into specifically workflow. So you could have it configured in your system to say, well, if I get a return authorization that references a specific reason code, like refurbishments, then it could trigger other workflows and other steps, other departments to get involved, other people to get notified.
Yeah. And to triple down on that, the open solution environment, the designer component of it, this sounds like a case where you would have a specific UI for that use case, right? Because it's very specific, and you want to visualize that differently from you would look at regular returns that may come back through the back channel as opposed to returns for rentable products or like even repairs, right? So lots of flexibility is the point for that one.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to jump to the last one. Again, we mentioned information can be, from my experience, I would argue information can be all the transactions we talk about. But again, this is just for visuals, just to kind of go through. The price sales catalog is another one that we've heard a lot more. And it's through conversation and discovery. We'll talk about that more about the blueprinting session. But through conversation, we learned about the price sales catalog. Boys and I were just joking about it. And I thought I read a bad article or I got some bad intel. But there are companies who still send this as a kind of a booklet, right? A physical booklet you open, write your item number down, get it to your system, right? Yeah. Most we've heard over spreadsheet, PDF, but it can be a digital product, right? Speed and accuracy, first things coming to mind. If I update my price sales catalog on a period, I can schedule it out of my system to go to my customers without having to have someone sit and wait and email every single customer the updated price catalog. The buyer gets the benefit of having the right price at the right time. We have a use case where, similar to what I explained before, same customer actually, they, along with the invoicing challenges, they would not have an updated price catalog for 30 days out, almost a month out. So the whole month they've gone firing off purchase orders, wrong prices, wrong item numbers.
This happens a lot, and whilst it's only, say, one transaction, we're explaining in recent conversation with customers, this topic is quite a hot one, and just for the reasons Terence mentioned. So, just out of interest, again, you know, who receives price sales catalogs via a PDF or via an email or an Excel spreadsheet today? No one or everyone? Yeah, you do. Yeah, and then how frequently do you request to receive that? Is it a quarterly thing, a monthly thing?
Depends on the problem service.
Yeah. And then do you presumably someone manually enters all that back into your ERP system, so when you create orders you have the right up to and then have you had instances where the pricing is completely incorrect and then you have to rework? Right. So this is a common theme that we see in pretty much all meetings now. And back to Terence's point, you know, we can digitize that. The frequencies can be set up. You can have it daily if you really want, monthly, weekly, and you have that partnership with one of your suppliers to set that frequency up, and that data flows directly into your enterprise system. So you have the up-to-date, accurate pricing.
Yeah.
Also, there's a risk. You cannot only upload a new price list when you don't agree to that. Maybe. Yeah, and also you have ever to double check if the prices what maybe was agreed last year, and the order was placed in time with the right price, and maybe now a new one is valid. So that it is nice to share data, but there needs to be guided and rules upfront aligned in this system, in the various systems. Not that everyone push in something and you have crap in your system then later on. And the same is for acknowledgement. I can acknowledge everything, but maybe it's down suits with the requested things.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and you're right. And so to kind of, I walk backwards from the acknowledgement component in and of itself. In some ERP systems, in most, you can receive an acknowledgement as a delta table. So you can view what it is, but you don't have to update your record. But there's also ability for workflow in Mint for you to actually review that transaction and collaborate. That's the word I didn't use this morning. I told Beth. I didn't use that word on the stage, but collaborate. You can now discuss that with the CMO. They say, hey, you asked for 100 units by October 15th. And they say, I can give you 50 by the 15th and 50 by the 30th. You say that's not good enough, right? So you can still negotiate. So we don't replace the business interaction, but we provide that space for you to do it in. And so in that conversation that you want to have with them, it's logged and captured, not over email. So then they say, okay, great. Okay, hey, I can give you 75 by the 15th. I'll do that for you. You agree to it. Now, if you allow the workflow, that acknowledgement can flow into your ERP system, or it can live inside Mint. And the Mint can be, or I don't like to use the term repository, but it can be a space where you can view that data, right, if you need to in the future. But I agree with you, even with the price sales catalog, we don't replace the business relationship. So this is, again, it's a mechanism and a vehicle for you to support that, but you are able to have that discussion, to your point, and say, wait, these aren't the prices we agreed to. You refer to your contracts, and then once they update it, they can pass it through, and you can choose to accept it. And I would stretch. I'm going to stretch here, and we're recorded. With reports and dashboards, if you think about the concept of having that data, there may be an opportunity for us to compare data in the future from the current price sales catalog that they may have passed 6 months ago to the one they're going to send, and you can analyze that data yourself, potentially in the system, as opposed to maybe doing outside of the system or through a secondary process. But you do not have to accept the transactions right away into your ERP, or none of these. You don't have to take it right in. It can stop in Mint. You can approve it and then send it on if you're okay with it.
Does Mint come with out-of-the-box KPIs, dashboards to start with?
So on the reports and dashboard piece, there are going to be out-of-the-box ones that we are going to build and ship with product. Some of the kind of key ones that we're going to have, I say simple ones, but like give me a list of all the purchase orders that have been received in the last X time frame. Then you can select what time frame you want and which ones of those have been acknowledged. Link it to an ASN with some charts and that kind of stuff. So yes, it does come out the box, but then you can also build your own reports, your own dashboards as well. So
Though we call this commerce end-to-end for Mint, the transactions you see are going to be repeated in the other orchestrations. We broke them up at a request, which I think is a great way to look at it, but the transactions, nonetheless, a purchase order is a purchase order. Make that very clear. This is not just for commerce. A PO is a PO when we place one, right? The acknowledgement, the ASN, the invoice, how you use them. There are many attributes inside each transaction type that can be leveraged, but we are isolating this way, but these can be repeated in some of the other orchestrations we're going to talk about.